want to quickly find out any questions from the last topic of discussion in class. Any questions, please? Any questions, please? All right. So in the absence of questions, then quickly we will look at the topic of discussion for today, which is digital security, ethics, and then privacy. So we are looking at how, in summary, we're going to look at how to provide some form of security framework for a hardware, software, and then the data or information that is sitting locally on our machine or in the cloud, or simply put, on the internet. Okay, that is all our discussion is about. Whilst the class is ongoing, you still are at liberty to ask as many questions as possible. Either you raise your hand and then I will recognize you, I'll give you time and then space to talk, or you can equally write your question in the chat panel. I will read your question to the hearing of everybody, and then I would answer those questions that you put there. Okay, if you would want to contribute to the class, you can raise your hand. I will give you time and space for you to contribute to the class. Chris Debra, your hand is up. Or it is instead Joseph. Joseph, when your hand is up, you want to ask a question or you want to contribute? Okay, no problem. So the topic of discussion for today is digital security. Digital security, ethics, and then privacy. So like I said earlier on, the summary of it all is looking at security measures you can put in place to secure data or information, or further still, how to secure hardware and then software on the computer system. We're going to look at the very objectives of today's class in much specificity. Number one is to define the term digital security risks and briefly describe the types of cyber criminals. And then number two, to describe the various types of internet and network attacks and explain the ways of safeguarding against these attacks. Number three is to discuss the techniques to prevent unauthorized computer access and use, and then also to explain the ways that software manufacturers protect against software piracy. And number five, to discuss how encryption, digital signatures, digital certificates work, and then also to identify safeguards against hardware theft, vandalism, and failure. Explain the options available for making backups, and also to identify risks and safeguards associated with wireless communications. And then the last part one, to recognize issues related to information accuracy, intellectual property rights, codes of conduct, and then green computing. This will be the third time we would have had discussion on green computing, because in our current era, it is that much important that we tend to understand how to appropriately manage waste from electronic devices, because we have electronic devices almost everywhere, right? And then finally, we would discuss issues surrounding information privacy. So in more specific terms, these are the issues that we will need to discuss before the close of the class today, right? So we want to define in exactly what is digital security risks. It is any event or action that could cause a loss or damage of computer or mobile device hardware, software, data, information, or processing capability. So there are several activities, several events. People write scripts, people write software, or in some cases, there's a physical attack on a network infrastructure or a computer system or on people's electronic devices with the major focus of trying to what? Damage that particular hardware. So then sometimes the main focus in here is the information maybe that is under investigation. If it is no more in existence, then you have no evidence against whoever perpetrated that particular crime, right? So there are several reasons of which people more often would engage themselves in providing huge levels of risk to either hardware, software, or information or data, or the processing capacity of a particular computer system or a network. We want to also quickly mention that any illegal act involving the use of computer or related devices generally is referred to as what? Computer crime, or if it happened on the internet, then we will call internet or on a network, then we call that what? Cyber crime. So all of these fraudulent activities that do take place, but on the internet based illegal acts is what we're making reference to as what? As cybercrime. Typical instances of these digital risks include a possibility of intercepting wireless communication. So two or more people will want to communicate, and then there could be a third party that is sitting in between the two of them. The person may not necessarily be blocking the messages from being sent from one person to the other, but the person is just having a preview before it is sent to the receiver. In some other senses, that person may choose to alterate the message, or let me put in other words, to change the genuine content of information communication to the receiver before the receiver gets to receive it. So if the person said we have class, let's say starting 7 a.m., the alterated message could suggest that the class is instead starting at 7 p.m. Okay, so it is sometimes very difficult to identify exactly which portion of these messages are being changed, right? So on the network, there's that high possibility that in a communication between two or more people, there could be a third person that is sitting in between the two parties, intercepting, which will mean, number one, the person may just try to view, or number two, the person would not just view but also edit before allowing the message to get to the original receiver of it. In some other cases also, to have hardware theft, which would literally mean that someone would have stolen either fully or a part of the computer system, right? And then we also have software theft, downloading software or installing software for which you do not have the authority of installation or authority of copying. That is software theft. And then we also do have information theft, having access to information for which you are unauthorized to have access to. You take a scenario of a folder that is locked. That will mean that it may have a password credential for which you will need to fulfill before you can open up the folder, but you find ways and means of outwitting that particular framework where you need to enter password. So you may do a guesswork to enter an arbitrary password, and maybe it works out for you, or use another software tool to outwit that particular password credential, and then you have access. That is information theft. Or in some cases, instead of just viewing what is stored in the folder, you may choose to have a copy of that folder or delete it, damage the information outright. So quite apart from information theft, we also have system failure, which could be because of an overdose of power transmission to a particular socket. If your computer is connected to that machine, then what would happen is that if your machine is not regulated, it doesn't have a gadget that is regulating the incoming power supply voltage, then there is a high possibility it can damage the electronic circuitry on the motherboard or on the computer system, and by that you have a system failure. And then also we have internet and network attacks, which more often the very common ones are viruses. Okay, quite apart from viruses, we also have worms, spyware, malware, and all of that could attack your machine whilst you are on the network. So these are some of the digital security risks for which we are more often exposed to. We have different kinds of criminals when it comes to digital security risks. Number one is hacker, which is a very popular terminology that is used to describe a person who uses computers to gain unauthorized access to data. So it could be a network, or it could be a singular machine, and then that person might have learned some techniques, some methods that will help outwit levels of authorization, and then the person can have access to that information for multiple purposes, either intended to or not intended to. Some people just do hacking, break into systems for money, or it may be just to gain that popularity rights, that I'm the one who hacked into NASA's secured system, or hacked into Ghana police website, or hacked into let's say Ghana Commercial Bank, their financial software. There are several other reasons that people will want to do this. Some do this also for jobs. If you own let's say an online e-commerce site, you're doing to buying and selling on some stuff, the payment is done also online. If someone is able to give you a justification that there is a flaw in your payment system, so then people can purchase items without payment, then that person who identified this big loophole, if he can provide solution to your network, automatically that person becomes the security engineer to your organization. So some people do these things also on the grounds of making an attempt to get a job, right? So that is it about hackers. So hackers primarily they use some techniques, some methods to have access to gain unauthorized access to data on a computer system. But apart from hackers, we also have the cluster of criminals we call crackers. The cracker is a person who breaks into a computer system without authorization. And most of the time, the purpose is to damage. For example, destroy files, steal credit cards, or in some cases, plant viruses into the computer system or in the computer network. As at this point, do you have any question? If you have a question, you can ask us, especially the distinction between a cracker and then a hacker. All right, so we'll continue. So Quite apart from a hacker and then a cracker, you also have that group of criminals, computer criminals that we call script kiddo. Script kiddie, they are a set of individuals that could literally be hackers or crackers, but in this case, they do not have their own tools, so they are using public tools that are meant for hacking into system or cracking, and by that they are unable to erase the traces of penetrating into these systems. Okay, these are the set of criminals that we call script kidding. So they are using existing computer scripts or codes to hack into computers. Then they lack the expertise to write their own tools that will help them do the hacking or cracking. And then we also have corporate spies. These corporate spies, what more often they do is they could be for example, we could have competition between company A and then B. Why competition? Because they are into production of the same product, right? So company A might have people who will just be moving around to have information from company B. What exact information do they need? They need information as to the secret behind how they produce their respective product. What would be the essence of A getting to know how B does its production? It is just to gain competitive advantage over what? Over B. The same way it could be B that will set spies on A. The essence is in the same direction, to have access to information how A does its production. What will be the relevance of that information to be? The same as A would have enjoyed. So they are looking out to uncover the exact specification they use in their production to gain competitive advantage over what? Over A, right? So those individuals that are involved in stealing information, secret on how companies do their production or manufacturing, they are called what? Corporate spies. And then we also have unethical employees. Unethical employee could be someone within of the company B, but that person is paid by company A to steal information about company B for A. Or it could be the reverse, that someone working for company A is being bought by a representation from company B. For what purpose? To steal information from company A for B. Meanwhile, that person is working for company what? Company A, right? So these are unethical employees, and then they are all what? Criminals. And then we also have cyber extortionists. We also have cyber extortionists. Cyber extortionists are more often involved in cyber extortion, right? So cyber extortion, if you tend to understand that, then you will know who exactly cyber extortionist is. Cyber extortion is a crime which is involving an attack or threat of an attack coupled with a possible demand for, let's say money or some other response in return for stopping or remediating an attack. Okay, so you take a typical situation of a seizure of a network or a particular machine, because remotely these attackers have installed a software that would have possibly locked your entire computer system or your entire network. It could be like a ransomware. So the essence of this ransomware is to help them make a demand for possibly a financial demand. Until you have fulfilled those demands, they don't get to release your network or your computer system for you. Those who are involved in this, they are called cyber extortionists. They have schemes that will make them extort money from owners of companies or some institutions. So quite apart from cyber extortionists, we also have cyber terrorists. A cyber terrorist is an individual that is involved in cyber terrorism. Right? So cyber terrorism, it refers to an unlawful attack and then threats of attacks against computers, networks, or in some cases, information that is stored within of a network. And then the major intention is in here is to intimidate or coerce a government or aid people to furtherance of political or social activities. Okay, so just to possibly influence how a particular political party is governing, or how a particular ruling management is taking care of an institution. You could have a cyber terrorist that will want to use some knowledge he or she or group of individuals would have acquired in terms of having unauthorized access to networks, and then just to hijack the system and begin to make what? Some demands. Right. So these are the set of criminals that are in relation to the use of what? That use computers in perpetration of those acts. There are several kinds of attacks that do happen on the internet or on a network. They are more often coming in the form of what you call a malware, and this malware is a software which consists of programs that act without the user's knowledge, and deliberately they alter the operations of the computers or the mobile devices. Okay, a typical example of that is the virus, worm, Trojan horse, rootkit, spyware, and then adware. The adware more often comes in the form of what? Advertisements that keep popping up on your screen. And then the spyware is a program that is placed on your computer system or your mobile device. And most of the time, the approach that is used is that the users do not even know that the software of that kind is installed on what? On their respective computer systems or on their mobile devices. Okay, what is the essence of this spyware? Just like the name suggests, it is supposed to spy on you. So it is to take your personal information. It could be on your credit card or whatever, or it is supposed to monitor whatever activity, task that you are doing on your computer system, and then communicate that to someone sitting somewhere remotely on the network, and then the person may use it to his her own advantage, or based on the intent of the spying, the person could deploy that. Right? And then quite apart from hardware and spyware, we also have the rootkit. The rootkit is a program that hides computer or mobile devices and allow someone from remote location to take full control of the computer or network. So it is it's an attack that is done remotely. So just like in cases of ransomware, rootkit is that's similar to it. It's a software that would have to be installed on a computer. It could be on a network, or it could be on a set of networks, or it could be specifically to attack a single machine on a network. And then we also have the Trojan horse, the worm, and then the virus. What is the clear distinction between these Trojan horse, the worm, and the virus? It is their way of operation. So the Trojan horse, it hides within or looks like a legitimate program. Meanwhile, it is not. So unlike it is with a virus or a worm, the Trojan horse does not replicate itself to other computers. It is just to reside on that singular machine. Okay, so the focus is just to attack a specific machine. As against a worm, the worm is a program that copies itself repeatedly, for example, in memory or on a network, using resources and then using up resources and then possibly shutting down the computer device or network. Okay, so the major focus of the worm is to have achieved the goal of bringing down the computer system or the network by replicating itself. Okay, so the Trojan horse doesn't replicate itself. It doesn't make copies of itself from one machine to the other. It is just to reside on that singular machine. So the Trojan horse as against the worm repeats itself or makes copies of itself, and then could be transferred from one machine to the other. Quite apart from the worm and the Trojan, we also have the very popular one we call the virus, which is a software that potentially has a damaging effect or infects a computer or mobile device negatively by altering the way the computer or device works without the user's knowledge or permission. So there are several kinds of viruses. Each of them exactly what they are designed to do. Some are designed to attack the RAM. Some are designed to attack the microprocessor or both. Some are designed to delete information, that you have on your computer system. The question we want to try to answer now is how does the virus spread? The virus is able to spread if some set of unscrupulous programmers do develop, let's say, either the virus or a malware or a Trojan horse, and then they embed that possibly in a Word document. What will happen is that Word document is further shared or sent to several number of people. This man here, when he received the Word document, he didn't mind, he just opened it. This lady here did not open it because the name that is given to the file is unpopular. The sender who sent that particular file is also unknown. So what is the difference between the two of them? The one who tends to open it would have the virus attacking the machine. So you see in here a ransomware notification that is put on his screen. But because this lady did not open it, she gets to continue to use it. So we be mindful, checking on the credentials of incoming mails, and then we make that decision to either open or to not open them. If the spam filter installed that is working in the mail servers, if they are unable to identify an incoming mail as a spam, then you, the user of the machine, would have that responsibility of being 100% sure the source of that mail before you open it up. All right. Some of them do not take effect immediately as you open the file, but if there are clickable links in there, and then you click to open them, then they begin to now function. So be mindful which mail we open or do not have to open. At this point, do you have any questions? Please, is it bad to use cracked software? You answer this question. Do you think it is good to use a cracked software or not? Most of the time, cracked software may even have a component of either a malware, Trojan horse, or a virus embedded in it. So number one, it is not good to have a cracked software. Having cracked software, number two, is software theft. So you make a decision whether it is good or bad. Do you understand? Yes. All right, so moving on, we have what we call a botnet, which is also an internet or a network attack. It is a group of compromised computers or mobile devices that are connected to the network. So all set of the electronic devices that are under attack on a network, we call them what? A botnet. So a compromised computer or device is further known as what? A zombie. Or a computer that is attacked on a network is further known as a zombie. Now, one of the critical points in which you want to follow critically in here is a type of attack called DOS attack, which represent denial of service attack. The essence of this attack is to disrupt computer access to an internet service. More often, the attackers will just send an influx of several messages. So then the network is flooded with an unnecessary voluminous data message. So then it's unable to allow users to now further have access to what? To the internet service. Okay, that kind of attack is what we call denial of service attack or DOS attack. And then we also do have a backdoor. A backdoor is a program or set of instructions in the program that allow users to bypass what? Security controls. Most of the time, all of the OSs that we have do even have this backdoor component. What is the essence? The essence of this is that you take a critical look at this. If you install an OS on your machine, you put an administrative password on it, and then you forget. What should happen? Should you throw away your computer system and then go and buy a new one? No. There are methods, there are schemes, approaches you can use to bypass the administrative level, so then you can restore your password. It is not for a bad purpose, but some people can learn this technique, all in the name of either hardware theft or to be involved in a software theft. Okay, and then we also have an attack called spoofing. Spoofing is a technique intruders use to make their network or internet transmission appear what? Legitimate. So it could be a network, a set of individuals or an individual that is posing as an internet service provider and replicating, let's say, a legitimate type like it is with MTN, Tigo, or any of these popular ones. And then you may think you are actually on a network of, let's say, Tigo or on MTN. So a transaction you would have not done when you knew that you were on someone else's private network. Now, because there is a network that is posing itself as a trusted source, you may begin to use your credit cards or about targeted users on a particular network. Now we will need to learn also some techniques to prevent these internet and network attacks. I think we have mentioned or discussed exactly what firewall is before in class. That was in the last one class session that we had. A firewall is a hardware or a software. Its basic purpose is to do what? Is to protect a network resource from what? From intrusion. Okay, so at Valley View University, the firewall we have is called Cyber Room. This is supposed to be a Y. Cyber room. I should think we have all seen the graphical user interface that will request for your ID and then password before you are able to have access to the internet. It is the interface to the internet provided by the firewall on the university's internet called what? Cyber room. What is the essence? It is to allow and then disallow. It is to allow legitimate users and then disallow all those who are not what authorized. How would they know that? So the firewall software side has a database component that has a list of all legitimate what users to the network. If your name is not on that list or in the database, then you are identified as a possible intruder, right? So look at this. This is the internet. This is the hardware firewall. Its functionality is to pose itself as a wall in here. So the information coming from the internet will go through the firewall. The information coming from the local network for which we would be on it is seated in between the firewall and then what? The internet. So the information coming from the internet goes through the firewall. The information going out of this network for which our individual machines will be on will also go through the firewall. What to be the functionality of the firewall? It is to check if the packets are in their original form or not in their original form as defined by the scope of the network. Anything outside of that particular attribute will be identified as what? A possible intrusion. So it will deny access to those requesting or sending data packets. Okay, so that is basically the functionality of the firewall. It is to protect some set of computers or to protect a computer from a possible intrusion. All right, so we moving on further, apart from talking of firewalls, to look at issues related to unauthorized access and then use. Unauthorized access is the use of computer or network without what? Permission. And then unauthorized use is the use of computer or its data for unauthorized or possibly illegal activities. Okay, so these are the two sides of it. Either you are using a computer to have unauthorized access, or use of a computer or its data for unapproved activity. To prevent these cases, most of the time the operating system has components that will prevent this unauthorized access and then use. Okay, so there's a policy component within the operating system. You can choose to get it active or inactive. All right, so under the section of library and devices, you can choose to say you are deactivating that attribute of document to be shared. So then in this case, it becomes what? Not shared. You can make that choice to share it. If you share it, then it means that that side of your computer system becomes what? Public, and anybody at all outside of your who does not even have authorized access can access that component of your machine that is labeled as what? Shared. Okay, so it is inappropriate that after sharing a part of your document online, it is appropriate that you would have to come back again to not share those respective documents. Okay, so then you are sure you have blocked every kind of unauthorized access on the network. And then we also have music. You must put it to the attribute what? Not shared. Pictures, the videos, the printers, and then all possible forms of what? Media, we turn them off whilst they are not in use. When you want to use them, you can turn them off or you can turn them on, or in the cases of the documents, the music, pictures, videos, and then printers and then other devices, you can come back and then make them what? Make them shared. But whilst you are not using them, it is advisable that you put them in the attribute mode of not shared, or simply put all the media devices what? Off. Now, I have been mentioning access control, access control. Exactly what is access control? Access control defines who can or cannot have access to either a computer, a device, or a network. Also defines when they can access and what actions they can take whilst accessing that particular computer or information or data or network, right? Now, the computer device or network should maintain an audit trail, okay, that recognizes successful and then unsuccessful what? Account login. Okay, so all usernames and then passwords must be registered on the computer system, or let me put it much more directly, it must be registered on the server that is responsible for validating all possible entries. It must have the audit trail that will indicate all successful entries and all unsuccessful entries. What is the essence of this? It is to help the network administrator that upon inspection or observation tell all those unsuccessful entries, and then to identify their IP addresses telling where the requests were made from. By that, the network administrator can tell whether it was a possible hacking attempt, or it was a possible cracking attempt. It is very much important, and that will help that we can take care of possible unauthorized access or what? Unauthorized usage. Deborah Apple, kindly turn off your video. In also trying to prevent unauthorized access and then use, we can make use of what? The passphrase. Okay? Passphrase, also what we call passwords, which is combination of words more often containing a mixture of capitalized or lower cases and then punctuation, and associated with username that allows access to what? Certain computer resources. So it could be just one computer or some computers or a network. And then you need to create a passphrase. A passphrase is the same as password. The essence is to disallow unauthorized access and then use to computer systems. We could also have a PIN, which is personal identification number. How different is the PIN from the passphrase or the password? The PIN is most of the time a numeric password, okay? Not alphanumeric as we could have in the case of the passphrase. They are more often numbers. So it's like the PIN code to your debit card or credit card, your PIN code to accessing the ATM. All of these ones, we call them what? PIN. What is the essence? It is to help the service provider identify a genuine user. Until the PIN code is correct, you are not allowed access to that particular resource. We could make use of biometric devices to authenticate person's identity by translating personal characteristics into digital code that is compared with digital code in a computer or mobile device, verifying physical or behavioral characteristics. Okay, so those of you who participated in the national elections, national elections through voting, you would have gone through that early stage of having to be identified. How were you identified? You are identified by your thumbprint. So there is a biometric device for which you run your thumb on, and It compares your current thumb data with what is stored in the database of the immediate machine that your thumb was appended on. If your current thumb pattern matches with one of the patterns in the thumbs in the data that is connected to your record, then you are allowed access. Otherwise, you are denied. So to prevent unauthorized access and then use, we can make use of what? Biometric devices. Quite apart from biometric devices, we could also have the fingerprint biometric devices that could come as a fingerprint reader or face recognition system, voice verification, hand geometry system, signature verification, iris recognition. All of these ones, they help pick information, biometric data about beings, and then we use that in identifying people. With the fingerprint, more often it is capturing biometric data of your finger to try to identify exactly whom you are. So, for example, as you can see in this picture here, the thumb is put on the thumbprint, the fingerprint device to compare if it is still the same person, right? And then we also have the hand geometry system that would make it that you would have to put your five fingers onto the device for you to be identified. And then this is that for iris. So in this case, it is going to use the pattern of your pupil or your eye to identify the user to the system. Or in some cases, the voice is used. So you talk, and then the system would have to identify who is using the system, okay, or who wants to use the system. So if there's a match on the finger, there's a match on face, there's a match on voice, there's a match on all set of 5 fingers or on the hand, or it will be by signature, or if it is by the eye. These are platforms. If there's a match on any of them, then you are giving access to what? To the computer system or to the network. So we can use all of these platforms as basis to either accept or deny access to unauthorized users on what? On the network. At this point, please, are there any questions? You cannot hear me clearly. Wow. The Lord is my shepherd. Can you confirm for me if you can hear me now? Let me know.
Yes, sir. Please, I want to ask about the iris recognition system. Can you please repeat again?
All right. So, facial recognition is to identify your full face. The iris recognition,
Okay.
it is to take pattern of your eye to identify who will need to have access to the system. Okay, so in this case, it is not taking your full face, but the focus is on your eye. Prince, do you understand? Or it was Paul? Prince
Yes, sir.
Boachi, you asked the question. So the iris
Yes,
recognition
please.
is to identify people, but in this case, the identification is not your fingerprint, it's not your hand, it is not your face, but the eye.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Please, are there any other questions? Okay, so quickly moving on. Still to prevent unauthorized access and then use to systems, we can have a 2-step verification. A typical example is wanting to have access to, let's say, your Facebook account, and then in an attempt of logging on, you will be asked to select between either a phone call, a machine phone call, or provide a phone number, and then a code will be sent to you. Okay, So the code is sent to you, you enter the code. If it's correct, you are given the first step access, and then you will still have to go further to enter your ID and password. Both of these steps are supposed to be correct before you are given what? You are given access. And that is what we call what? Two-step verification. We also do a practice of digital forensics, which is a technique or a discipline that is in charge to discover, collect, and then analyze evidence found on computers and the networks. Okay, what is the essence of these ones? For areas of let's say law enforcement, in criminal prosecution, in military intelligence, information security department, and then insurance agencies, they do use these digital forensic techniques to help come to a conclusion how some specific incidences took place. Okay, so now in the presence of a lot of cyber criminality, if you want to go into law, then issues that were criminal activities that were done online, you needed to have done digital forensics, which will help to discover
It's 8 o'clock.
How those possible fraudulent activities took place on the internet. Okay, so digital forensics is very much that important to help discover or collect and then perform analysis of evidence that is found on computers or on network in connection with possible cyber crimes. A kind of attack also that we mentioned earlier on is software theft. Software theft is simply stealing software. Okay, so it could come in the form of stealing software media, intentionally erasing programs, or illegally registering and or activating programs. My good friend who asked a question about whether crack software is good or not, this is your answer. It is illegal. The reason why it is crack is you are supposed to have bought the software. You didn't buy it. So you have stolen the software, and then you have stolen also the key code that will allow you to present yourself as if you are a legitimate user. And then also what you will do, and then we'll refer to also as software theft, as making illegal copies of a program. So in this case, it could mean that yes, you bought the software, but after buying the software, you are not a retailer of the software. You are not supposed to resell it, but you are reselling or retailing the software to some other people. That is also software theft. It is not yours. So many manufacturing companies incorporate an activation process into programs to ensure that the software is not installed on more computers than legally licensed for. Okay, so whenever you buy a software and you are doing the installation, there comes with that license. More often, people do not even read. We just click on next, and then we hit on the button, finish, bam, then it is done. You don't care to read about the content of the license. The license more often is giving you instructions on how to use the software. And if it is not a network edition that you bought, then you are supposed to be the sole user of that software. But the person who buys the software and then will go and install it on multiple other machines, which are all illegal activities. So the essence of the product activation, right? So the product activation, which is conducted either online or by phone, users provide the software product identification number to associate the software with the computer or mobile device on which the software is is installed. This is to have prevented the making of illegal copies of the software. Installing also on more than one allowed what? More than the allowed or allowable number of computers for which the license permits. Okay, so in preventing software theft, apart from the product activation, the software by the installation also has an embodiment of the license agreement. Okay, the license agreement specifies what you can and then you cannot. But like I mentioned earlier on, majority of people who do installation, including me, we do not care so much about those long licensing agreements. We want to use the software and then have to come and read all of these lengthy documents. But it is very important to get to know what is in the license. If it is that you are by agreeing to the license, you are allowing the service provider of that particular software to take your personal information, then you have committed yourself. You have already said yes. And then they have a strong legal system that will back them up with all of these respective issues. So you need to be much mindful on how you use, especially these. If you go for a cracked version, right, you must be 100% sure what is written in those respective licenses. Okay, but on the major note, the license agreement comes in two parts, stating clearly what you can and what you cannot use the software for. So quite apart from software theft, we also have information theft. And information theft occurs when someone steals personal or confidential information. So information or data that do have password on it, you find a way of cracking the password, so then you can use that to read. That is information theft. It is confidential, but now you have access to it. How do you prevent this information theft? You can use the process called what? Encryption. So the question is, what is encryption? Encryption is one sub area of cryptography, which is a process of converting data that is readable, by humans to an encoded what? Characters. Okay? What is the essence of encoding that human readable information? It is to prevent unauthorized access. That information is meant to be confidential. It is meant to be confidential. So to make it confidential, then that is the reason why you want to put a password on it. You want to put a password on it to deny people from having access to what? That information, right? By putting a password on it, you are practicing one of the very fundamental approaches called what? Encryption. Right. So in practice, in encryption, we have something called a key. The key could be a public key, or it could be a private key. So in this case, a sender, number one seated here is supposed to send this information to this gentleman at this other side. Now, by the method of what we call encryption, the lady uses the receiver's public key, right, to encrypt the message. So you will tend to understand that what we have here, the new plant will be located, will now be rewritten in this form by the use of the public key of the receiver. Okay, so in the technical sense, this is what will be in the communication channel, right? That is what will be sent in the communication channel. Now, when that hits the gentleman's machine, the information which was encrypted and then written in a form that is not directly meaningful will be converted back into its original state. So this is the original state as it is indicated from this side. This is the original state, right? And then it's what it was encoded into this form using what? Using the receiver's key. This is the receiver's key. It was encoded into this. When that hits the machine here, it would have to be what? Decoded back again to its original state. So you can see that he has received the confidential information which was put in this encoded form back again into its original form using what? The private key of this person, the sender, right? So it is just as they put in a password on a document. The password that you, the sender, has put on a document, you will need to share that password with what? With the receiver. So when the receiver receives it, you also need to append that same what? Password to it, and then he or she can be able to read the content. Okay, so it is just like either a boy or a girl sending 143 as an SMS. I hope you understand this 143. 143 is I hate you, isn't it? But when you send this digits to either the lady or the guy, when he or she receives it, he understands the true meaning of 143. 143 in this case will be a practical example of encryption. So you have encoded either I love you, or I hate you using digits 143. So you, instead of communicating this, you are using the numerical representation. Okay, so you, before this SMS is sent, it would have been a known discussion on anytime you receive a message from me, how the conversion is to be done, so then it will make sense to both parties. So this is what we call what? Encryption. Why do we do encryption? We do encryption to prevent what? Information theft. Also, with information theft, another procedure we can use to prevent information theft is to provide what? Digital signature. And then digital certificate, right? So when you click on this side, where you see the padlock, if you are using the Windows operating system, your padlock would be at the right. Okay, mine is a Mac OS. That is why the navigation is done at the left. When you click on the padlock here, in the browser, when you come to this side, it tells you the connection is what? Is secured. Okay, so most of the time you will see in the URL HTTPX. The S represents what? Secure, right? And then also here, when they come from what? Google.com, and then it is issued by GTSCA and certificate 101, and then it says that it expires. The certificate expires in May 2021 at 11:36 p.m. in Chinese Standard Time, because I have set my OS's reading time from China when I was in school, right? So it gives on a step further to say is that the certificate is what? Is valid. You should be able to check on your own if the certificate of the website you are accessing is original or it is fake, because the network service provider or the internet service providers do embed certificate in all of them. By checking out on the certificate, you can tell whether it is a legitimate website or you have visited an illegal website. Okay, so on your own, do check out on that. If you are using a window-based browser, then you should find the padlock towards the right side of your window. Otherwise, If it is Linux or on a Mac OS, the navigation will be done from the left side. All right, so that is about digital signature and then digital certificate. So digital certificate is a notice that guarantees a user or a website is what is legitimate, and that is what I have showed you how to use it, and also how to identify. And I've also mentioned to you how to identify whether the website is secured or not secured. So in the search, in the URL, you should see the protocol cited as hypertext protocol secured. The S, HTTPS, the HTTP with the S denotes what? Secured. When you find that, then you are 100% sure that the website you are accessing is what? Is secured. Quite apart from that, you can check on the certificate by clicking on the padlock symbol that is in the URL part of the browser. Right? So, for example, in this case, the person is at Amazon, and this is on a Windows machine. So you see the navigation is done from the right. You see the padlock here. When you click on it, you have the chance to view what the certificate, and then you can tell whether it is valid or invalid. All right, so what we mentioned earlier on were all in relation to software theft. We also have hardware theft, and then we're going to look at also vandalism, that is simply by destruction of a hardware resource or hardware failure, right? So hardware theft is the act of stealing digital equipment. So if you have stolen a pen drive before or hard disk, you are a cyber criminal. Hardware vandalism is the act of defacing or destroying digital equipment. So if you are to be investigated, or an institution is to be investigated, and then all you will hear is there's a fire outbreak in that institution. I hope I didn't mention any ministry's name. When the Ministry of Finance was to be investigated on some financial malfeasance, immediately, just in the next 2 days, all we heard was there was a fire outbreak and all documents were burnt down. That is a typical situation of hardware vandalism. They are destroying any possible evidence that could be traced from the machines that they used in there. So in providing security to outweigh a possible hardware theft and then vandalism or hardware failure, what you need to provide is a physical access controls, like providing door locks or window locks. Or further, you can use an alarm. So when the person picks it from the defined area of use, the alarm could sound, and then you will be able to be alerted if someone is trying to take your device. And then also to provide some physical security devices, like using cables or using locks, okay? And you could also have device tracking app, in this case, which is a software, if you can install on your mobile device or on your computer system. So then, just in case it is even taken away from you, you can, in as much as the GPS on the device is activated, you can track it to know where it is. In terms of hardware failure safeguards, you can have a surge protector that will check on the quantum of voltage that is incoming or outgoing, and then to have it balanced. Okay, it will manage the voltage that is incoming and outgoing to be sure that the exact amount of voltage is coming to your computer system. And then you could also use most of the time desktops do use the UPSs because they do not have the battery. Okay, they do not have an inbuilt battery. So the UPS tend to be an external power standby power supply to desktops and then servers to aid that, immediately the main power supply goes off, there will still be power available for the machine to be powered on. Okay, and then we could also make duplicate component or duplicate the computer system. So the same information on computer A, you can make it available on computer B, C, D, E. What is the essence? So then when one of the machines break down, we are sure that there is another machine that contains the same information. And then computers are also modeled to be what? Fault tolerant. That is, if one component of the machine breaks down, still the machine gets to be what? Functional. It doesn't, the entire machine does not get to break down. But some components within of the computer system are extremely delicate, or they form the core of the computer system. For example, if you have your RAM crash, definitely your entire machine is going to be down. If you have your processor crash, definitely you're going to have your entire machine not to be functional. Okay, so the core processing units tend to be exceptional to the computer system being fault tolerant. But quickly understand that when you're talking of fault tolerance of the computer system, it is just by the mere fact that the computer system is designed so then one component being destroyed will not literally mean the entire computer system will not function. Okay, so if you have one of the key parts on your keyboard not functioning, it doesn't mean your entire computer system will lose its functionality. It will still be operable. If you have a software on your machine and it is not the operating system that is more functioning, then definitely you would have your computer system to be what? Functional. That is what makes a computer system fault tolerant. Also, to prevent, to secure your data or information, you can have a backup. All right. The backup, you could literally mean you are creating a duplicate of a file or a program, either in the same repository or on a different repository. It will make a lot of sense if you go by that which is on what? Offsite, so then it is not residing on the same location. If your machine is literally attacked, if they are the same, it is stolen. If it is the same location, it means that everything that you have created, even in the name as backup, is also what? It's also missing. So it is very important that more often with backup, especially with information, you have them a copy of it instead in the cloud than on the same machine, on the same local machine. You said you have another copy of it. Your entire machine can crash, and then what happens to what you created as a backup? It would have also been lost. So consider more of creating an offsite backup or putting your data in a cloud storage, which is on the internet. So there are different categories of backups. You could have the full, differential, incremental, selective, continuous, protective, or on the cloud. We would look at this in detail in the next slide. And then we also need to quickly mention that there are 3 generation backup policy, which is the grandparents, the parent, the child. So you could have several policies that are nested together to help you take care of what? Take care of, to make backups or to make copies of that information. Now, looking typically or quickly at a full backup, the full backup copies, by approach, it copies all the files on media in the computer. Okay, and then the advantage is that you have faster recovery method. All files are saved. The disadvantage is that because you are copying or making a copy of the full file sets that you have on your machine, it is the longest backup time that for which it will take, as against the differential, incremental, selective, continuous, and then what? The cloud backup. Okay. So now quickly looking at the differential backup, it copies only the files that have what? Changed since the last full backup. Okay, so if you did a full backup today, then by close of work tomorrow, what you would have done tomorrow within the daytime, at the end of that session, it would copy, it will make a backup of only the tasks that you did tomorrow at the close of work, and then add to the earlier full backup. So it wouldn't take that much time as the full backup did. And then we also have the incremental backup, which copies only the files that have changed since the last full or incremental backup. So the subsequent additions that you would make on a singular task after the differential backup is what we're making reference to as the incremental backup. And then we also have the selective backup, for which users choose which folders and then files to include in a backup. So in this case, your focus is not to make a backup of all the files or all the information or data on your machine, but some selected ones. And then we also have the continuous data protection, which specifies all data is backed up whenever a change is made. So if there's no change made on any file or any folder, then there's no backup transaction done on that particular computer system. And then we also do have cloud backup, which is very popular and known amongst almost all of us. In this case, the files are backed up in what? In the cloud, or simply put on the internet. And they all come with their respective advantages and disadvantages. So you must know what kind of information you want to keep, or you want to keep public. If you want to put them in the cloud, then you do not know the kind of full security framework that is put in there for you. Okay, so you want to be mindful what you are keeping in the cloud storage as a backup. If it is a network you are managing on your own, and then you are keeping a backup of your information for which you have in mind that it's supposed to be 100% confidential, then that is fine. Even with that, you will need to still be sure of the security framework. So when it happens that you are putting it on the cloud, then you must be 1,000% sure. Deborah, Paul, your hand is up. You want to ask a question? Or it was a mistake you pressed on raise hand comment. Okay, no problem. So moving on, now we're going to look quickly at some security risks that are involved in wireless security. So in the use of wireless access, there are some additional security risks that are involved in here. Some perpetrators connect to other wireless networks to gain free internet access. I know a lot of you like this, free internet. Some of these free internet access are actually traps. When you have access to these free internet access, you need to be very careful why the person open it up. You may instead be the one at the losing end. Your private information could be what? Could be stolen. Moving on a step further, there are ethics or good use practices that will help that governs how you can appropriately use information on a network, appropriately use or handle hardware and then software. So technology ethics are the moral guidelines that govern the use of what? Computers and the mobile devices, information systems that are related to what? To technology. And more often, it is to pay attention to information what? Accuracy. So then people can have access to information, but they should not be able to what? Alterate it. So issues in relation to, for example, intellectual property, which refers to unique and original works such as ideas, inventions, art writing processes, company and product names, and then logos. It is very important that whenever you come up with these ideas, inventions, or art and then writings, you get them what? Registered. If they are registered, then you can put copyright to protect these these novel ideas that you have come by with. By that, you can come up with a policy that people will not have to replicate them. Okay, so it is to give some sense of what ownership, right? So that is it about, for example, copyright. That will help you to protect your tangible form of what expression, and then also with intellectual property rights, which are rights to which creators are entitled to their work. It is your own work. It could be a write-up. It could be the art. It could be a process you have written up to help achieve or to resolve some specific task. In all of them, you must own them. Owning these things means they must be registered, and then you can have your copyrights to help you protect them. And then we also have digital rights management, which is a strategy that is designed to prevent illegal distribution of movies, music, and other digital content. There are a lot of illegal websites to access movies. So then a movie you should have paid for before you watch them. I am not to come in and teach having access to illegal websites, but I am only to mention that it is ethically wrong. It is unethical that you would use any of these means to have access to a movie that is meant to be paid before you have access. Okay. Also, still under ethics, we have what we call code of conduct, which is a written guideline that helps determine whether specification is ethical or it is unethical, or also to define whether you are allowed or not allowed. A sample IT code of conduct is technology may not be used to harm other people. Employees may not meddle in others' files. So a file that is said to be confidential, you should not have access to it. Okay? And that code of conduct on number 3 will say that employees may use technology only for purposes in which they have been authorized. So if you have not been authorized to use a tool to spy on people, you are not supposed to spy on people. Okay? Technology may not be used to steal. So when you design a particular software, and then that software can give that capacity of stealing, you can come up with a policy to state that this is not meant for what? For stealing. Or within of the organization, in the IT code of conduct, this could be one of those specifications, which in essence is to guide the moral behavior of people at the said workplace. Green computing is also used, and in this case, it involves reducing electricity and environmental waste while using computers, mobile devices, and then related what? Technologies. Okay? So with green computing, the idea is all about managing electronic waste. So when you're when you are no more going to use your mobile phones, or when your laptops have gone beyond their lifespan, how do you dispose them? That is what green computing is about. And also how to manage what, or manage or conserve energy. Some of the electronic devices, the very old types, they did not have that component that was managing electricity. You take, for example, there are several settings within of the computer system that you can set it up. So then when your machine is idle, automatically it will go to sleep or it will be hibernated. All of these are policy schemes at a software level that is helping that you can manage what? You can manage electricity. When your screen is active, the machine consumes more energy than when it is put to what? To sleep, or when you hibernate or turn off your computer system. Okay? So in green computing, there are some set of tips. Number one, on energy conservation, and also that which is to reduce what environmental waste. And then we also have information privacy, which refers to the right of individuals and companies to deny or restrict the collection, use, and then dissemination of information about them. Okay, so it is not every company that you go and then you will get any information at all that you wish. Typically, for example, if you want to do a research work and then you want to use a bank as your case study, banks more often do not want to give out their information because they think it is credential. Financial information about people's transactions inside of the banking hall is critically confidential to the customers. So in such cases, they have policies of information privacy that would deny people from having access to these banking information. With information privacy, there are several components within the operating system that you can activate to help that your information is not easily given out. In the use of the firewall, as we discussed earlier on, you could use the firewall to disallow people from having access to unauthorized access to information on your computer system. Okay, so there are several policies that are within of the software that we install, from OS down to the application software that we use, that you would have to take your time and then go through, and especially more on the licenses, which are in reference to the use of the hardware and the software, which includes the information privacy policies. You must read through very well to check those ones that you want to allow, and then uncheck those ones that you want to deny before you click on the button finish. Because some of them are checking on issues of cookies. Okay, the cookies keep personal information, and then there are some software, when you install them, they will want you to allow the vendors of those software to have access to what is stored in the cookies, which will mean that they are going to have access to your personal information. It is very much important that you safeguard your personal information. Information about you can be stored if stored in database whilst you are trying to fill out information on a network, okay, or trying to create a profile on an online social media, or trying to register a product warranty. In those cases, information about you could be captured. You will need to be sure the settings of your browser, whether it is capturing information into the cookies or not. And then you either accept or deny access to these platforms. So cookie is a small text file that a web server stores on your computer. Websites use cookies for a variety of reasons: to allow for personalization, to store usernames and or passwords, to assist with online shopping, target advertisement, track often users visits to a website. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier on, you will need to be much aware of the space that you are allowing for the service providers to have access to on your computer system or on the network. Okay, because, for example, in the organization and then the target advertisement, the reason why some specific advertisement will be hitting your screen is because of the cookies. And then the cookies are planted on your computer system by by the service providers. Okay, so you do not have access, you do not even know what is stored in the cookies, but the service providers of that particular software or network can't tell what is stored in there, and then they are using them for these purposes: personalization, keeping your names and then the passwords in there. For what purpose? Only they would know what they intend to use these ones for. But practically, well, you can see that in the area of e-commerce, some specific websites will keep popping up on your screen for you to have access to them because of your personal information and then personalization that is created in these cookies. And then also, by that, some advertisements will keep popping up on your screen. All right, so That is it about the cookies, as I explained earlier on. Another kind of attack that we could have on the computer system is called what? Phishing, which is a scam in which a perpetrator sends an official looking email message that attempts to obtain your personal information and then financial information. So it could be someone who knows maybe the bank that your bank is, and then the person will create a fake email address to make it look like an email of that legitimate bank and then send it to you. But when you look at it critically well, you can tend to find out, you can tend to understand that this mail is not coming from your original bankers. More often in those mails, your name is not put in there. They will write "Dear customer." Appropriately, when a mail is coming from your bank or from any of the telecommunication networks, in as much as your SIM card is registered or in as much as the bank has your information, they will not say "Dear customer." They will say "Dear named person." They will put in your name. All right. So that is a very simple tip you can use to identify whether it is a phishing attack or it is not a phishing attack. It is a spam or not a spam that has hit your inbox. Quite apart from phishing, we also have spyware and then an adware. A spyware is a program that is installed in your machine to collect your personal information, and most of the time they are installed on your machine without even your knowledge. The adware is a program that displays online advertisement, and this is made possible because of the information kept in the cookies. And then another attack is called social engineering, which is defined as gaining unauthorized access to or by obtaining confidential information by taking advantage of the trusting human nature of some victims and naivety of others. So a typical example is I can, let's say, pose myself as a worker of one institution, and then I'll pick a number of the IT person for that particular institution, and then I'll call in and say that my name is this said person. I will mention that name because I would have gotten that name from the internet, and then I'll add on to say that I'm trying to work on a tax immediately, but maybe I took some alcohol last night, so I have forgotten my password. Can you reset my password or account for me? And then the IT guy will do that. And then immediately that happens, you are giving access to the that particular person's account. Okay, so you are imposing as another by trying to play on the naivety of, in this case, the IT personnel. That is what we call social engineering. Well, the concern about privacy has led to enactment of federal and state laws regarding storage and then disclosure of personal information, right? So to outwit this information privacy, employee monitoring is that much important that regularly these policies on how the good practices of the use of data and information and good practices of handling hardware and software, you once in a while check on your employees by planting cameras to observe, record, and review these activities and functionality of people at work. And then we can also set content filtering as it is done on the firewall. So the firewall can help you do content filtering, denying people access to social media platforms or denying people access to pornographic websites. Okay, it is that much important. So in summary, what we have discussed today is to have looked at several digital security risks, and then we have also discussed some cybercrime and gotten to identify some set of cyber criminals. And then we have also looked at the risks and the safeguards associated with internet and network attacks, unauthorized access, use, and then software theft. And then we also look at information theft and then hardware theft, vandalism, and then failure. And then we look a step further into the various backup strategies that could be used, and then to secure data and information. And then finally, we have looked at some ethical issues in society and in various ways to protect privacy of personal information. At this point, any questions?